For the past few months, something strange was happening in my kitchen. At first, I couldn't put my finger on it. It just felt darker. Not dark, but dim. Quietly dim. The kind of dim that sneaks up on you, one day at a time, one meal at a time, until you start realizing you're squinting to see what's right in front of you. Okay, so I'm a bit embarrassed to say, for the past 6 months, probably more, the light above my main kitchen space was fading. Slowly, like really slow. And because it didn't just burn out one day like most bulbs normally do, I just ignored it. I told myself, that's just how it looks now. So I didn't rush to fix it, partly because I honestly didn't think changing the bulb would make it any brighter. So the thing is, I've never seen a bulb dim before. They always just pop or die. So I got used to cooking in that soft half light, when everything looked duller, the counter, the food, even the air. It wasn't terrible, it was just less. But that less stretched into months. And what started as a small inconvenience became the new normal. Until one day, I realized I couldn't see what I was making for my son and me. I was literally feeding my family in the dark, thinking it was fine. And when I finally decided to change it, the cover was stuck. Grease, time, and dust had sealed it shut. I twisted, pulled, tried everything, but I couldn't do it alone. I had to call maintenance. And when we finally got it off and put the new bulb in, oh my God, the whole room lit up. It was blinding at first, like stepping into a version of my kitchen I hadn't seen in years. Colors popped. Corners I had forgotten had reappeared. It felt like the light had reached places inside me too. That moment, it hit me. Sometimes the problem isn't that our light burned out. It's that it's been dimming, slowly, quietly, whilst we've been too busy adjusting to the dark. So today's episode, it's about noticing when the light in your life has been fading. It's about finally changing the bulb, even if you're not sure it'll make a difference. Because maybe, just maybe, what you're missing isn't motivation or luck or even timing. Maybe what you're missing is light. Are you ready? I am. I'm Jonah. I'm your person. Let's get to it. Welcome back to the show. I'd like to welcome new listeners and give a great big welcome back to those who have returned for more. In part 1, we're going to talk about the slow fade. You don't notice the fade when it's happening. It's too subtle, too patient. The light in my kitchen didn't just flip off one day, it drifted. It dimmed so slowly that my eyes kept adjusting, one shade at a time, until dark started to look normal. And that's how it happens in life too. We don't just wake up one morning disconnected from our purpose or drained of excitement. It happens quietly, through 1,000 small accommodations. A compromise here, a skipped boundary there, one, I'll get to it tomorrow, too many. And before you know it, you're living in a version of your life that's harder to see clearly, harder to feel alive in. But you've adapted. And the most dangerous changes are the ones we just adjust to. Because when you're in the slow fade, there's no moment that screams, this isn't right. There's just a steady lowering of light, a dulling of energy, creativity, clarity, until what used to inspire you now just exists. And the tricky part, it still works. The switch flips, the bulb glows, And you tell yourself, see, it's fine. But deep down, you know it's not as bright as it used to be. And that's where I found myself. Still showing up. Still doing what I needed to do. But I was doing it under a dimmed light. One I didn't even realize was dimming. And when we stop seeing how much darker it's gotten, we stop asking the question, when did I stop shining the way I used to? And that's where awareness begins. When you finally pause long enough to notice what's missing. When you realize that the problem isn't that your light is gone. It's that you forgot to look up and check it if it's still shining the same way. All right, let's talk about part 2, the false normal. Once something's been dim for long enough, your eyes stop asking for light. They just adjust. They settle. They find a way to function in a half-lit world and call it balance. That's what I did in my kitchen. I learned to navigate the space by memory, not by clarity. I knew where the plates were, where the pan sat, how far to reach for the seasoning. It worked until it didn't. Because the moment you depend on memory more than vision, you stop truly seeing where you are. That's what happens in life when we start mistaking comfort for peace. When we start saying things like, it's not perfect, but it's fine. I don't hate it, so I guess I'll stay. I've learned to work around it. We confuse adjustment with acceptance, and we call it strength. But it's not strength. It's survival. And survival is meant to be temporary. The false normal creeps in quietly. It whispers, don't make a fuss. Don't change what's working. And we listen. Not because we love the dimness, but because we fear the brightness might be too much, too revealing, too honest, too new. It's wild how we can live years in half light and start believing that's what clarity looks like. We stop questioning whether things could be brighter, because bright becomes something that only happens to other people. We adapt our expectations down to match our circumstances, and we end up calling maintenance on everyone else's problems, but never our own. For me, the false normal looked like procrastination with a story behind it. I told myself changing the bulb wouldn't help anyway. I believed that dim was permanent because I'd never seen a bulb fade before. The mindset kept me stuck longer than the grease ever did. And isn't that what happens to most of us there? It's not the actual obstacle. It's the belief that brightness isn't possible anymore. That maybe we're just not meant to see things clearly. Again. Look, I'm not trying to be overly dramatic, but when you live long enough in the false normal, you start to forget what real light looks like. You stop expecting clarity. You stop demanding the truth. And you stop believing in better. And that's when the soul starts to ache. Not from darkness, but from forgetting what brightness felt like. And here's your first challenge. Take one area of your life and ask yourself, am I calling this normal just because I've gotten used to the dim? Be honest, because awareness is the first twist of the bulb. Okay, let's talk about that grease and the cover here in part 3. When I finally decided to change the light bulb, I thought it would take a minute. Grab a step stool, twist the cover, pop in a new bulb, done. But it wasn't that easy. The light cover was stuck. I twisted one way, nothing. The other way, still nothing. I tapped it with a screwdriver knowing that it was glass and it could break, but still nothing. I even put on chef's gloves because the rubber grip, nope, didn't work. I kind of even did something a little dangerous. I took a small torch, like the ones used to caramelize sugar on the top of creme brulee, and I thought I heard a squeak, but still nothing. It wouldn't budge. Years of heat, grease, and dust had built up to the point where it wasn't doing anything. It was sealed shut. And I just stood there, staring at it, thinking, of course it's stuck. Because isn't that how it always goes? And by the time we finally decide we're ready to make a change, we run straight into the buildup we've been ignoring. That cover wasn't just glass. It was resistance. It was every moment I said, I'll get to it later. Every excuse that settled like dust until the simple act of twisting something loose turned into a battle. And that's what happens when you let neglect layer. When the delay becomes part of the design. The longer you avoid the issue, the thicker the buildup gets. On the bulb, in your mind, in your habits. You start realizing that you're not just fighting the problem itself, you're fighting everything attached to it. The guilt for not fixing it sooner. The fear that it's too late. The doubt that maybe it's just not worth fixing at all. That's why transformation feels harder than it looks. Because the resistance isn't random, it's residue. It's the evidence of how long you've been living in the dim. I remember grabbing a rag, trying to get a better grip, still nothing. And I laughed out loud. One of those frustrated, iconic laughs, thinking, this is me. This is my life right now. Because how many times have we stood in front of something we knew needed change and realized we can't twist it loose by ourselves? So, sometimes it's not about strength. It's about leverage. It's about having another set of hands, another perspective, another bit of wisdom that can loosen what's stuck. That's when I knew I needed help. It wasn't defeat. It was clarity. I'd done what I could, and now it was time to call in for support. And that's power in that moment. The one where you stop pretending you can fix it all on your own. Because when you ask for help, you stop wrestling the cover and you start preparing for the light. The buildup wasn't proof of failure. It was proof that I'd lived there, that life happened in that kitchen. But the cover, it wasn't meant to stay closed forever. Look, sometimes the grease isn't your shame. It's your story. And every story can be cleaned, cleared, and made ready for the light again. All right, let's talk about part 4, calling maintenance. There's a moment right between frustration and breakthrough where you have to decide what story you're going to tell yourself next. When that light cover wouldn't move, I had a choice. Keep forcing it, risk breaking it, or even cut myself, or admit I needed help. So I put in a ticket with my apartment complex. Maintenance showed up a few days later, and it was my favorite maintenance person. Tool belt full of all the necessities. But more importantly, that calm energy that people have when they've seen every version of stuck. He looked up, smiled, and said something like, yeah, that happens sometimes. Heat and time will do that. And something about that sentence hit me harder than I expected. Heat and time. That's exactly what had happened in my life too. The heat of constant doing, the time spent avoiding. It sealed things that were meant to open easily. He twisted once, nothing. Twisted again, nothing. He wasn't annoyed or mad or anything. He was a little perplexed. So with confidence, he just yanked the whole fixture from the ceiling, wires and all. He put it on my kitchen table and said, hold here. I was now the apprentice. And with a couple of twists, the cover finally came loose, just like that. And for a second, I just stood there, kind of speechless, half relieved, because I knew we still had to get the fixture up there, the wires reattached, and flipping the switch in hopes that we would have my light back. Because sometimes what feels impossible to you takes someone else 5 seconds. Not because they're better, but because they're outside of your perspective. They can see the angle you can't. They can apply pressure in a place you overlooked. That's what maintenance looks like in real life. It's the friend who calls you out gently, the mentor who gives you language for what you've been feeling, the therapist who helps you face what you've been avoiding, the prayer, the pause, the conversation, the divine nudge that says, you don't have to do this alone. Look, we're so conditioned to equate independence with strength that we forget connection is what keeps things functioning. Every system needs maintenance. Every heart does too. And here's the beauty of it. When someone helps you, you see how simple the fix can be once the shame is gone. All that time, I thought it was about the bulb. It was really about control, about believing I had to solve it solo, or it didn't count. But help doesn't make the victory smaller. It makes the light brighter, because now it's shared. When the cover was finally separated from the fixture, I could see the dust and grease build up inside. It wasn't about changing the bulb anymore. It was about clearing out what had been clouding the glow. That's real maintenance. Not just replacing what burned out or what dimmed, but clearing what got in the way. Not just getting fixed, but letting yourself be seen in the fixing. So here's your second challenge. Who's your maintenance? Who do you need to reach out to? Not because you can't do it alone, but because you shouldn't have to. Sometimes, the most courageous move isn't twisting harder. It's asking for help to twist at all. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you never miss an episode if you're enjoying what you're listening to. Thank you. Back to the show. All right, let's talk about part 5, the new bulb. When the cover finally came off, it felt symbolic, like the air had shifted even. I could see the old bulb, coated in a thin layer of dust, barely hanging on. That was my next moment of truth. I couldn't just clean the old one and hope it would shine like before. It had to be replaced. I had already went to the store about a week before and picked up something new, brighter, more efficient, longer lasting. And I started thinking about how often we try to live a new season with the same old light. We clear a little space, remove some of the buildup, get honest with ourselves. But then we screw the same thoughts back in, the same mindset, the same patterns. And we wonder why things still look the same. The truth is, clarity isn't just about removing what's blocking you. It's about upgrading what's inside you. You can't expect a dull bulb to light a new chapter. You need a brighter source. That's what changing the light bulb really means. It's not about chasing a new version of you. It's about installing new thinking, different frequency, higher wattage, a new way of interpreting the world around you. When we screwed in that new bulb, it clicked into place with this tiny, satisfying sound. Most people probably wouldn't hear it, but I did. And before I even flipped the switch, I knew something was different. Because this time, I expected brightness. I didn't doubt it. And expectation is powerful. When you believe something can shine, it does. When you believe things can get better, they start to move in that direction. I flipped the switch, and instantly, the room transformed. The corners I hadn't seen in months came back to life. The colors of the walls looked different. Even the texture of the air changed. Lighter, cleaner, fuller. And it hit me. This is what renewal actually looks like. It's not dramatic or loud. It's clarity. It's presence. It's finally seeing what's always been there, but in full light. We all have bulbs that need changing, old ways of thinking that can't illuminate who we're becoming. You can't live with the new awareness with old wiring. At some point, you've got to upgrade the frequency. So here's your next challenge. What's the old bulb in your life? What thought, belief, or behavior is no longer lighting the room the way it used to? Replace it. Don't just twist it tighter. Trade it out for something that meets who you are now. Because sometimes the most powerful shift isn't in your surroundings. It's in the light you bring to them. All right, let's talk about the flood of light here in part 6. When that new bulb came on, it was almost too bright. I had to blink a few times just to take it in. The kitchen looked brand new, not because anything changed, but because I could finally see it again. The walls I thought that were dull, they weren't. The counters that looked old, they were fine. It wasn't that the kitchen had lost its life. It was the lighting. And I just stood there, kind of laughing at myself. Because the whole time, I thought I needed a renovation, when all I really needed was illumination. That's what happens when light floods back in. You start realizing how much of what you called broken was just hidden. How many dreams you thought were gone were just sitting in the shadow. It's wild what clarity does. It restores truth. The flood of light, it was overwhelming at first. Not just visually, but I'll be honest with you, emotionally. I mean, so much so I wrote an episode about it. Because when you've been dim for too long, brightness feels foreign. You almost want to turn it down a notch just to make it comfortable again. But don't. Stay in it. Let your eyes adjust to truth. Because this is what you were missing. This is what you were built for. To see clearly. To create, decide, love, and live without squinting through confusion. As the light filled every corner of that kitchen, I noticed details I'd completely forgotten about. Little things. The pattern in the tile. The reflection of the microwave door. The way the sunlight mixed with the new glow and made the space feel alive again. And in that moment, I felt something shift inside me. Something small, but undeniable. It was the reminder that light changes how you feel about everything. It changes how you cook, how you move, how you think, and even how you show up. Because visibility is empowerment. You can't fix what you can't see. But when you can see it, you can move with confidence again. That's the power of renewal. Not just a new perspective, but a new posture. You stand taller when the room is bright. You make bolder choices. You trust your steps again. So if your lights just come back on, don't rush to get back to normal. Take a moment. Let yourself feel what it's like to see again. Because that's not just the bulb lighting the room. That's you remembering your power. And here's your next challenge. Now that the light's back on, what do you see differently? What looks new? What feels clearer? And more importantly, what are you ready to do with that clarity? Because when the light floods in, life stops waiting. All right, let's talk about part 7, living bright. Standing in my kitchen now, I can see everything. Every corner, every counter, every forgotten detail. The room isn't different. I am. The light didn't just illuminate the space around me. It illuminated me, my mind, my vision, my heart. It reminded me that clarity isn't just something you stumble into. It's something you create, sometimes with help, sometimes with persistence, Sometimes with faith, that light exists when you can't see it at all. Life works that way sometimes. We live months, even years, in dim light, adjusting, tolerating, surviving. We tell ourselves it's fine. We procrastinate. We rationalize. We convince ourselves that brightness won't make a difference. And then one day, if we're brave enough, we decide to change the bulb. Sometimes the cover is stuck. Sometimes the grease is thick. And sometimes we cannot do it alone. But with patience, humility, and a little help, the light comes. And when it does, everything changes. The details you missed come alive. The shadows no longer scare you. You see possibilities you didn't even know were there. You notice the beauty you forgot to notice. That's what it means to live bright. To take action when life dims. To upgrade your thoughts, your habits, your perspective. To let the flood of light reach every part of you that's been waiting. The kitchen isn't the only place that matters. It's in your relationships, your work, your dreams, the corners you've stopped exploring, the ideas you've ignored, the feelings you've buried. When you change the bulb, you see them all. And suddenly, life is just not visible. It's vivid. So here's a recap for you. The slow fade, the false normal, the buildup that kept you stuck, the courage to ask for help, the new bulb, the flood of light, and now, living bright. So here's the question for you. Where in your life is it time to change the light bulb? What's dimming slowly, quietly, and going unnoticed? Who or what can help you remove the cover? And what new frequency are you ready to install? Because once the light comes on, there's no going back to squinting in half light. As we close the show, I want to leave you with this final thought. The light is on, and maybe for the first time in months or years, you can see everything clearly. The corners you forgot existed, the walls you thought were dull, the floor you walked without noticing. This isn't just a kitchen. It's your life, the space where you cook your dreams, feed your passions, and nourish people you love. Sometimes the bulb dims slowly. Sometimes the cover gets stuck. And sometimes you need someone else's hands, someone else's eyes, someone else's guidance to get it open. And that's okay. That's human. That's growth. But the moment it comes on, the moment the light floods in, you remember what it feels like to see clearly again, to feel possibilities, to notice beauty, to make choices with intention instead of squinting through habit. So here's what I want you to do. Look around. Ask the hard questions. Notice the dim. Call for help if you need it. But change that bulb. Because clarity isn't a luxury. It's a responsibility. To yourself, to the people around you, and to the life you're capable of living. And when you do, when you finally allow the light to reach every corner, you realize something remarkable. The world has always been this bright. You just forgot how to see it. The light is waiting. All you have to do is turn it on. Thanks so much for continuing to join me in this journey. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you know someone that you think can benefit from this message, please share it with them. Thanks again for hanging out with me today. Thanks for coming back, and have a great week.